Throughout the city, Seattle Pacific University has placed 17 rain gauges to capture the accumulated rainwater in inches. The following data represents the rainwater measured in October 2016. Find the 5-number summary statistics, identify the interquartile range, outlier boundary values, and then create a box plot to represent the data. First, we need to enter this data into the list feature of our calculator. For the next part of this example, I'm going to show you on 2 different calculators because not everyone has the same type. On the left side, I have one of the newer calculators, and on the right-hand side, I have an older calculator. Notice it does not matter which list I put into my calculator. So on the left, I've put my data into L5, and on the right, I've put it into L1. As long as you know where you're holding your data, that's all that matters. So next, on both calculators, you're going to hit Stat. Then you're going to use the arrow to scroll over to Calculate. Notice on both, 1var stats is the very first one, and you're going to hit Enter. On the newer calculator, it's going to give you the list and a frequency list. You're not going to be using the FREQ list. All you need to do on this first one on the left-hand side is just to let the calculator know where your list is. So remember on my newer side, I needed to enter in list 5. To remember to enter in a data list, you need to hit second and then the number of where your list is here. So I'm going to hit second and 5. And that's going to insert L5. Here I can now calculate. On the right-hand calculator, it's waiting for me to tell the calculator where my list is stored. So here I don't see that list feature. It's basically hidden from me. So it's just sitting here blinking saying, where's my data? Here my data was stored in L1, so now I just need to tell it that. So I'm going to hit second and 1 to identify the list. And it's going to place L1 on my screen. And now when I hit enter, I'll get the same information. And you'll notice that no matter which calculator I have, I'll have the same data. The only difference now is that on the left-hand side, my screen has the data in a smaller font versus the one on the right. So when I use my down arrow, I may have to use it a few more times depending on where I'm at to see more of the 5-number summary. So use your down arrow to scroll through until you can see the minimum and the maximum 5-number summary values. For the rest of the example, I'm going to use just one calculator because the values are going to be the same no matter which one I use. So here we can see our 5-number summary. Before I move on, I want to be able to write down on my paper the calculator feature that I used. So I used the 1var stats feature, and in the list I was entering the rainwater in inches in Seattle from October of 2016. Next, I'm going to identify my 5-number summary statistics, and these are all going to be in inches. So I'm going to put inches at the top so that way I don't need to write that unit on every single one of these values. And I'm just going to look at these and find them off of my calculator. So you can see those values that I take directly off my calculator and write them down. I'm going to need to now use my Q sub 3 and my Q sub 1 value to be able to find my IQR and my lower and my upper outlier boundaries. So my interquartile range is the 10.48 minus 9.75 value. This gives me a range of 0.73 inches between my first quartile and my third quartile. So next, my lower outlier boundary is going to be that lower quartile, the 9.75. And then I need to subtract off 1.5 of that interquartile range. Remember, that is a formula that we saw when we looked at the box plot features. We're not going to round this value since this is a boundary value. And then our upper outlier boundary is going to be the Q sub 3 plus our 1.5 times our interquartile range. Again, what these boundary values will do is they are going to give us the markers of where we can cut off our data that has been sorted and know if we have any kind of outliers. So let's look at our data. In order to be able to see if I have any outliers, I need to sort my data. So let's sort. Remember to sort whichever list your data is currently sitting in. Since mine was L5, I needed to do that. When you go back to view your list, you're now going to see your data from minimum to maximum value. Notice that my lower outlier boundary value is 8.655, and my minimum value of 8.1 is now below that value. That makes 8.1 an outlier. That's going to be a problem because that's going to actually skew our data. So we need to be able to identify that that is an outlier and remove it from the value of our box plot, but we want to be able to still identify that when we create it. So I'm going to make a little note that 8.1 is an outlier. Now I'm going to use my arrows to look at the bottom portion of my data set and see if I have any values that are larger than 11.575. But you can also go up and just look at your 5-number summary and see that your maximum value of 11.13 is smaller than that, and so I really don't have to do any extra work. So it looks like 8.1 is my only outlier. Now, in order to be able to create my box plot without my outlier, I need to delete this outlier and redo my 5-number summary. So to do this, you're just going to hit the little delete button on the highlighted value. So notice in my list feature right now, 8.1 is highlighted. You're going to go up to the little delete, which is next to mode, and just tap it once. And you're going to notice that 8.1 is now missing. You're going to now need to redo your 5-number summary. When you redo your 5-number summary, you're going to notice that some of your values have now shifted upwards and some of your values have not changed. We're going to need to make a note of this on our 5-number summary on our paper. So on my 5-number summary, you're going to notice that I'm keeping the original data, but then I'm going to shift over and make a note of what my modified data is. I need to use the lower modified values plus all of the others to make my box plot. So now we're going to make our box plot, which means you need a number line. For this number line, we're going to go from 8 to 11 and identify this as rainwater in inches. And now we're going to be placing our 5-number summary statistics. First, I'm going to use a little asterisk and identify this as my original outlier. And then I'm going to place 5 dots hovering above my number line for my 5-number summary statistics. And because these are decimals, we're going to eyeball where those are on the number line. Next, we're going to connect our minimum and Q sub 1 with a whisker, our maximum and our Q sub 3 with a whisker, and then we're going to create boxes between our interquartile ranges. And lastly, we're just going to denote which of those dots our 5-number summary is. This is what your box plot needs to look like. And again, all of these other key components on your work technique submission.